Welcome to Spirit Baby Radio. I am your host, Kelly Meehan, a citizen of the universe and a passage keeper and mentor for our new Earth children. I believe we are entering into a new psychic structure of our reality, and it is meant to embody deeper trust and ways into solid self-love and fearless integrity. Our new world energy of spirit babies needs us to consciously create within conception, trust pregnancy, and have freedom to birth and parent from innate wisdom. This is Spirit Baby Radio. Welcome to episode 238, March 2026. Education Roundtable Conversations. The future of our children is here now. How are we helping support children for the future? What do others believe about government-led schooling, private schooling, homeschooling, and unschooling? How do parents know what is best? How can we make a difference through building community with intuitive, innovative, and creative free thinkers? I have my roundtable here, selectively picked of 3 special guests that just inspired me. Welcome, everybody.
Hi. Hello.
And I'm going to read your names. Maybe raise your hand, since those that are watching will be like, oh, that's who she is. And there's no specific order. It was literally just the order of the emails that came in through your guests here. Let's see. So Mariana, can you say your last name?
Luecker. Hi.
There you go. Is a Montessori teacher with 20 years of experience. She is an intuitive, psychic medium, speaker, mentor. She's also the founder of Star Aligned Families, a community that aims to support families and individuals by creating individual sessions and programs to host a new way to welcome and support the evolution of education, parenting, and children. Welcome.
Hello. I'm so excited. Thank you
And
for
we
having
have here Kelly Patton, is the host of the Whole Woman Awakened podcast, a mother of 6, and an unschooling advocate with nearly 2 decades of experience in holistic living, self-directed education. She empowers women to rethink conventional systems and embrace a more intuitive approach to motherhood and learning. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Nicole Vetri. I said that right? Last name? Vatier. I know. I was supposed to go over this before and I didn't. Nicole Vatier is a former educator and over 20 years experience in conscious education, where she pioneered mindfulness and meditation practices in the classroom. Today, she's an intuitive energy healer and founder of Consciously Conceived, supporting individuals in healing, self-connection, and the soul-led journey of creation, including connecting with baby souls prior to conception. Well, thank you all for being here.
You.
And I always say in my podcast, like, I always say what I'm saying. Like, I say this, like, how did I meet people? And I always like to invite people on Spirit Baby Radio. It's very rare. Once in a while, someone will reach out and it's a good match, but I want to be inspired. And I feel very inspired by all of your backgrounds, all of your energies. And I love that it's, everybody has an intuitive, energetic connection to what they're bringing into this world, into their life, into your own family lives. And I want to share that more. As people know, Spirit Baby Radio encompasses children. It's, what do we do now? There's babies and they're children. And I don't know about all of you, and we probably would agree on this, is that there's a lot of things happening in schools and experiences with children. Like, I'm hearing way too much anxieties and things that I'm just like, I can't imagine anxiety should be a word a child knows. You know what I'm saying? Like, so I just going to share just a moment, like even something yesterday that happened. I talked to a friend and she has she hasn't had any children and she's not going to, but she says that she sees my posts in my private Facebook page and she sees me and my younger one who I'm unschooling, and maybe we can define that later. And my other one's, I would say, going to a holistic hybrid education, we'll call it. And so she said, I don't know anything about that, but I look at those and it's so amazing to her to watch those moments with me and my son and things that we're doing. Like, we'll go on a hike with poetry, or we'll find bones and do things without it having to be in a classroom or sitting, or there's rules, or you can't use the bathroom, you're not allowed to eat. And my child doesn't even know, like he just recently at almost 10 years old said, "What does anxiety mean?"
Mm.
And I'm like, I feel like I've achieved on some level because I'm like, I don't think my children should know a lot of these big things. And look at, we know the time we're in. I know like 3-year-olds that knew too much about the pandemic and it was
Mm.
not okay. And so that's kind of, yeah, my wanting and desire to talk because I've heard different things from you, especially those that were in the system, like, and how you're kind of bringing in something that maybe the system is like pushing, or they're like, and maybe we can start with you, Nicole, since you're right there, is share a little bit of what you've seen in your experience and what brought your heart to be like, oh, there's something more for these children. Because that's the piece, right? Like, what is that?
For sure. Thank you so much for your introduction and for this topic. It's one really, really close to my heart. Essentially walked out of the womb knowing I wanted to be a teacher, and my whole life was shaped around that. Every job I had, every volunteer gig, everything was about becoming an educator. And at the same time, I knew that I wanted to come from a different place in my teaching from what I had experienced. And it actually shaped my whole first business, which was called New Age Teacher, What I Wish My Teacher Had Taught Me. And it really was beyond the books, beyond the curriculum, that has remained for so many years just the same. We haven't really evolved with our curriculum in the public school system. And to me, there were so many more other important ways to learn and grow and evolve as a human that were just not happening inside that set expectation of what we were supposed to tick, tick, tick. And so I very quietly created my own curriculum behind that closed door. And I just noticed right away how perceptive the students were to it, creating community, learning how to effectively communicate, creating spaces of trust and safety, recognizing that we all come to earth with our own set of gifts and not ignoring those despite the external noise, despite so many parents saying to them, I want you to be a doctor or a lawyer, I want you to be rich. And then self-regulation, really knowing the inner self, your inner world, which I think will take you anywhere down the line. And so I started to just implement all of the tools and ways of being that I had gathered and learned throughout my own adult life, but wish I had learned from a much younger age, whether that was breath work, mindfulness, meditation, even learning about energy and my own intuition. And I started to bring those in a framework throughout the day. And no matter what subject we were working on, I was able to bring those pieces as the framework for everything else. And slowly, my doors started to open and people kind of poked their head in, got curious, noticed a different energy in the room. And it really was just the feedback of the students and the parents and the other educators that made me pause and say, there's something to this. We're really missing the mark in school. And yeah,
I have a
I'll pause there
question.
for
Yeah,
now.
I have a question. I have a
Mhm.
few questions that when you were saying that. So when you're in that setting, you create, how are you allowed to do that? I want to like get clear, like allowed, whatever allowed means, because I just wonder, but it sounds like the feedback was really the story of like, hey, only, yeah, what can you say about that?
Yeah, that's where it took a lot of courage. And it really has been a consistent theme throughout my life. And I write something called Blueprints of the Heart because I feel like I take these courageous steps and then create the blueprint for others to have the courage to do the same. That's why my door was closed, quite frankly, at the beginning, because there are so many rules in the system. And those just increased and increased and increased throughout the years. But the bottom line was no one could argue with the results. And results doesn't even sound like a great term to use. They couldn't say anything about what was coming out of those scenarios. The kids were happier, healthier. They wanted to come to school. And I, even at for example, they would come in and say, I don't know what's happening in there, but I want to learn what my child is learning. So it spoke for
Mm.
itself, and I always found a way. I always found a way to weave it in so that I wasn't getting in trouble, because it was just too important.
You know what you're saying reminds me of when I was in the clinical psych world for like a moment. And I remember sitting at a table with psychoanalysts. I was like, oh boy, young and old. And they loved what I was doing, but I too had to conceal that I was being telepathic and psychic. Are you kidding me? You cannot use those words. Energy, psychic, intuitive in those environments. It's interesting how we have to like make up ways around it to make it like palpable to their egos, really. Because you're like, wow, you're getting results. Does it really matter what it is? It's not like what you think it is, but it is this sentience, this like natural energetic current that we're sharing. That's what makes me curious. And so it's like you're kind of what you're saying. So you're kind of slowly integrating it, but you said the results is what people really appreciated.
There
Yeah.
was
So,
a felt energy, a sense that there was something different happening in that environment, and people got curious. And I think curiosity can lead us to so many wonderful places if we're open. And sure, I had to fudge the wording sometimes. I had to come up with my own lingo. I had to play the game. Sometimes you have to play the game if you're still in a particular system. Until you're no longer willing to play the game, as I wasn't, and
mm.
I stepped outside of the system. But I brought as much light as I possibly could in those 20 years to a system that I feel has a lot of work to do. And really, I don't even think the work is being done. I think it's crumbling and being rebuilt in a new way.
So, Mariana, I want to hear now because now I'm like, oh, like what's yeah. I want to hear like what your connection is and was it similar to Nicole's or was it different? Like what was your experience in the system of, even though it was more private, right?
Yeah,
Maybe, yeah.
Montessori is just an alternative education where each child is doing what they feel they want to do. So there's an intuitive part there, but it's not spoken. So you are presenting these different materials in different areas. However, all these things have to somehow be linked to the system. So, meaning we, the teachers, need to prove to the system that our way is fitting, however, is above and beyond that, actually. And in terms of the requirements of each year. So I would go, and again, it's very intuitive. That's how I would describe study, how to present certain things or teach certain things. But you are not to impose your way. You are not to impose repetition or choice, because what you're truly doing is creating a space that practices choice, freedom of will, right? Like, so you're trusting. All the premise of Mariana Montessori was like you follow the child, which has had a lot of misconceptions, meaning like you follow and the child does whatever the child wants. But really, when you trust in the alignment and what's happening in the community, you see peace all the time in those environments. If there's heart and there's observation, so we're trained, we have like 500 hours of observation, of just observing children, from like when they move their hands as they are born to how they draw. So you're doing because you are trained to catch the subtle physical expressions, and what that does is that you interfere less because you trust more in the child. So if I intuitively, because I can say it here, but in the classroom I couldn't say it, but I'm saying it here, I would be
What
like,
word would you use? What word would you use?
I would say, I think that child is ready for this.
Ah,
The child is ready for this, but I'm observing, but I'm also picking up, right? So I would see this child physically ready, yes, right? Because they are, I don't know, interested in this or talking about plants. So I will hear what they are talking about, or they would bring into the classroom their natural interest. And then I'm the link to the environment. So I would link to something of their interest, which is so fun for me. And then I would observe, I would remove myself and observe how they're doing with this thing that I show them, and are they picking it up later? Is it okay to suggest it later? And with that, in Montessori, there's something called the preparation of the guide, because really we're guides, we're not teachers. We just became teachers because that's the term that it was approved. But really, all of what she says, we're guides. We're guiding the soul of the child and expression, really. So then I would just observe, but be very aware of my agenda, because that is the whole transformation of the guide. Like, you are constantly observing what is your intention, and are you really observing the child and what the child needs, or you have an interpretation of that.
Isn't that hard though, right? I feel like
Oh,
we've all seen that. Like, how hard is that for, it's almost like you're saying a self-responsibility
yeah.
of like, so Montessori is more, they're privately, what would you consider Montessori? Like, you may have said that, but like, I want to get a deeper,
It's
yeah.
a private alternative system. Like, there is Waldorf, or there is
Yeah.
Reggio Emilia. So
Okay.
there are private schools. So yeah, they're not public
I think
schools.
you're right. People get scared when you hear the word unschooling or Montessori. It's like the room's burning down, like crayons on the wall, like it's like chaos.
No, and it's all the
Um,
opposite. But yeah, yeah. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
no, no, yeah. I want to just kind of shift over to you, Kelly, and I feel like we're talking about all these systems, and I literally just got like this really bothers me, but a lot of us say this, like we go, the regular school. And I'm like, why do we? So to me, like literally, I was inspired by the energy of the space, and I was like, it's really a government school. And if people are insulted by that term, tough shit, because it is a government school. Let's just say it out as it is. And I just wanted like I always want to deprogram things we say. Like when people say like, who's your doctor? I was like, what if I have one? None. What does that mean? Like, like, or like, again, it's like, oh, what school? Or it's like, there's such a, and I know there's such a consciousness of like what the mass people do. Like, that's just how it works. But to go outside of that, I do know is a self-will of one's own soul's journey, but also how does that even, I want to start with you, Kelly. How does that even feel from the environment if they're like, what do you mean your kids aren't ever gone to school? Like, what does that look like? And have you come up against anything over this time? And share a little bit about your schooling, yeah, with your kids and never having been.
Yeah, absolutely. So honestly, my husband took the lead on this decision, and I'm so thankful that he did because when you're coming as parents together, you need to be in unison about whatever decision that you are choosing for your child's, for however you want to pass on information and knowledge and wisdom. So with that, our oldest son was turning 5, and my husband started to question the options of schooling. And we just, knowing his personality, we knew that he was not going to thrive in a government education system. And we just didn't want to subject him to that. It was like, no, there's no way in heck. So with that, he started researching and he ran across Peter Gray's book, Free to Learn. And it was about, and it talked all about unschooling or non-structured education. And and it was wonderful how he went through the anthropology of learning and whatnot. And you ladies who have studied education and learn, I'm sure you have far more background than I do. I am anecdotal. I have all of these children who are each incredibly different, and it has been a journey to see what each child needs because it's not one size fits all at all, which I know you all know that very well as moms and as educators. So with that, it was really hard to let go of my idea
Mm.
of what it looked like to educate my child and what societal standards were for educational progress and markers. This child is this old. They should be doing these things. And And I was lucky enough to have a sister who was home educating her children. And she had 6 kids, and they were all pretty like 18 months apart. And so she was deep in it. She was using curriculum. They had done a process of private school and then gone to home education because her children were struggling within that system. And so it was nice to see like, okay, all right, she's doing that, but we're doing something even more fringy. And it was challenging because we didn't have a community. And that I think when people say if you're going to home educate your kids and especially like unschooling, well, how are they going to get socialized?
Yeah.
And so that big question, the answer to that we have found is, well, we have a large family. And I love seeing how fast the younger children learn because of the older children's example. I don't feel comfortable with the idea of having just 6-year-olds in a big group in one room. I don't think I mean, that's not how we learn. And that's not how we grow well, but that is how we can follow a herd. So that's not our intention as a family. And I think for this whole, 18-year journey that we've gone through with unschooling our kids, the biggest thing that I've learned is every mom needs to do, and every family needs to do what is best for them in their season of life and what resonates most with their hearts. And for us, we still choose unschooling. And now to define unschooling from my perspective, it is allowing them to learn through life and curiosity. And so that does require effort on providing opportunities without pressure. We don't do curriculum at all. And there have been times where I have freaked out and thought, "Oh, my children, they need to do spelling. And how are they going to learn to spell?" And my husband always comes in and says, "Simmer down. If they can read, they can spell. It'll work out." I was like, "How can you be sure?" And it's like, now we have a 16-year-old, an 18-year-old who is full-time in the workforce now. And it's kind of like the proof is in the pudding. And again, every child is unique. You can have a kid who goes through all of public school, who goes through a private school and fails to thrive as an adult. Is it the
Absolutely.
education system that failed them? Maybe, maybe not. Probably, I don't know. There's so many factors. But you can have a child who has never gone to school a day in their life, nor have they taken a math test, taken, molecular biology, because, if they don't, we have this idea that then they're going to be idiots and they won't be able to get a paycheck. It's such a bunch of baloney. And it's so cool to see your kids and then to finally meet other people. So I talked about community and that just wasn't any. And then learning. It really is my responsibility to make sure that my kids have community and have time to be able to connect with others. But do they have to be the exact same age? Heck no.
I love
And
that diversity of
yeah,
ages. Like, what does everyone feel about that? That feels like it actually makes sense. And everybody, were we all schooled here? Did everybody go to, nobody was homeschooled or unschooled? Yeah. So we have been ingrained in our own. And I know when I started homeschooling, actually during the pandemic, because my son went to a Waldorf school, my other one was too little. And it was light and day, but it was very like challenging at first because I was like, I was so schooled. We literally got all this homeschool fund because California was very good about giving money. We literally bought all these curriculums and never used I was like, you need to be a teacher to learn this. What was this English thing? It was, I forgot what it was called. It literally had cards and paper. And I'm just looking at
Even
this like,
teachers have to teach themselves that, just so
Yeah.
you know.
really? Yeah. I was like, oh my gosh, like this is not what I want to do. But I think we mess up a lot in both areas, I would think. And I tell a lot of parents, like, so, sometimes with homeschooling, unschooling, you're like, I don't know what the heck's happening. And other times you put your kid into a building, you don't know what's going on with them. Like
Oh,
you're just like,
exactly.
and that's a
Exactly.
little scary nowadays
That's
because,
so
and I know
scary.
there's trends. I remember being in the Catholic school and I didn't smoke cigarettes, but I hung out with them in the bathroom smoking the cigarettes.
Yeah.
and but then now they're microdosing and vaping is what I heard. I was like, whoa, like I was like, whoa, I'm like, people are microdosing plant medicine. I'm like, how do they need to disassociate. They need to get out of the space. But again, it's like, I think we're becoming more aware of that. Would anybody agree? Like we're like questioning things like and
Yeah.
that's one of my other
Really.
questions was like how, so, I have a lot of people around the world tuning in. It's different in every different area of the country. And I know some of you, are from Canada, not just America, but how does a parent, like, I don't know, like, how do they navigate that in their heart? Like, what would be, anybody have any good insight of like,
I think we know,
yeah,
right?
okay.
Isn't it like, I mean, as an educator for so many years, without kids and then with kids, and Montessori has like this mixed age group system. So we have 3 to 6 in one classroom, 6 to 9, 9. So there's so much beauty with what you're saying about older children. But even as I was sharing before we started recording, there's something that has changed and I can't explain it. And as an intuitive, I cannot explain it. Something has shifted and I get shivers all over my body. It's like, thank you, Spirit, for confirming this. Like, and maybe it is this new way is here, is pushing us. Like, definitely what worked in whichever way worked is no longer viable for anybody.
Mm.
And what sustained it is crumbling. I keep getting all these shivers. Just, right? So I don't know if you have felt that. Like, do you feel this? Something is falling, and then I cannot see myself. And I find this very challenging for me because I just started homeschooling. And I was schooled, even if it was a Montessori school. So I'm finding even staying, following the curriculum and bringing my own things as I do and making it fun and teaching them about, if they want to learn how to do a board game, we're doing that. If they want to, whatever it is, the project they want to, we do that. But I'm still trying to follow the system. I'm being super honest because I'm still grabbing to something that is not working. And I find myself like, I cannot do that. And thankfully here in Canada, there's so many online options. And there's this school that I found that they basically help you to create your own, support you with the whatever projects you want to do. So I might switch to that for next
Would you
year. But
consider that like a hybrid? Because I feel like there's hybrid schooling too, that in homeschooling, unschooling.
oh, are you asking me?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what I've been doing right now, but I still feel caged.
Mm.
So there's a feeling of like, we still have to do certain things and submit these things and have this done. And, even in Montessori, when I was teaching, I'd never felt, I never really felt that way. So because it was done right, like because you submit all your work and you say, well, this is what the kids are doing, you do report cards, you do everything, so the teacher does that, but you're trusting in this Montessori philosophy that is all encompassing, and you're trusting that the child will do, and whatever is missed, help. But here I feel a little bit more like a solo, and what you share about community, that is exactly what I'm facing. And because my family is in Mexico, my husband's family is in the Netherlands, we just moved to this area. So I'm trying to link that and see how I can sustain this, that I believe, and I know, going back to your question, I know this is what I need to do, but I'm still a little scared. So,
Yeah, you make a good point. And also I wanted something that came up recently with a child that I see and support wants to go to a good college. And I said, the homeschool kid can go to college. The unschool kid can go to Yale and Harvard. They actually want homeschool kids. And I want to say that because people don't realize, like, I have to have grades, I have to have this way. But I hear what you're saying too, is like, I think it's great awareness, right? Because you're like, whoa, the system is really penetrated. But like, think about all of you, think about when you were a kid. And I don't know about you, but there was a lot of fear in school for me. Like, I literally am remembering a story. I went to a private school for 1 year because I got left back in second grade, which was so humiliating and so traumatizing. And the lady left back like a whole bunch of kids, which nobody questioned that, right? I'm like, okay. And so I went to this private school for like a year, and on the bus, a high school kid, I was making fun of his name. He came up to me and slapped me in the face. And I was shocked. And I just stood there. I never told anybody. Like, I don't want my kid to have to go through stuff like that because I was so scared. I was surviving through school. And that was a private, very fancy school in New Jersey. And so it's like those moments. And I know that's probably happening now in a lot of those systems, right? It's like nobody, the kids and social media, we see that. But anybody else have experiences of their schooling that yeah, Nicole.
No, I just wanted to touch on this space of fear because it is a big reason why I left that system is it was embedded with fear.
Tell
Teachers are
us
meant to
more
be
about that. Yeah, I want to hear more. Tell us on
and
the
I don't
inside
usually
scoop.
lead with the dark side of things. I usually lead with the light side of things, but this is important, especially if there's listeners, viewers on here who are starting to question and have that curiosity. And, it's just planting the seeds really to do your own investigative work. But as an educator, I've constantly felt in fear of having my wrist slapped for not doing X, Y, and Z, however, wherever you live. But luckily I'm pretty courageous in that way, but it was still always there, there. And I think students were taught to fear. I mean, that is the institution, is to sit cross-legged, listen, be in a straight line. And although it is preached over and over again that we're teaching to be critical thinkers, they're being taught to think very specifically to the type of thinking they want you to think like. And so there were a lot of things that just didn't line up with what they said versus the reality of the situation. And if I can go there, I know we did in our podcast, Kelly, about the time back in 2020, that was a super big realization for me of how much fear was embedded into the system. And I started to write a book about it. I started to write about behind the scenes in school, the things that the general public and parents don't necessarily see. And I haven't finished it because
we need to see this book. Now you're held accountable here.
No, it's a tough space to go back into because I feel like I live in a completely new reality and timeline and dimension. And so part of me just doesn't want to be sucked back into that energy. But during that time, there were so many things that happened that were so disturbing to me as a human that people didn't necessarily know. I mean, sometimes I felt like I was in one of those movies. What's that movie? Where they're in the big hazmat suits and there's this big epidemic outbreak of, maybe it's called Outbreak, something like that. I felt like I was in that movie, and you would have these individuals walking down the hall in hazmat suits, basically taking students out of a classroom if they had a sniffle and putting them in a room called isolation room. Like, not even having the creative whereabouts to name it a softer space for those who are waiting for their parents to pick them up. And this is just a very small detail out of so many that I witnessed. And I just felt like...
You witnessed that separation, like they took them into a room? Is that what you mean? I want to make sure.
And they called it an isolation room.
And it was based on some kind of sickness, you said, or something else?
Yeah, if they had a sniffle, because this was during the years of COVID. And
so
there was just so much fear in the air. But my point to this is that a lot of families send their children to school and have such an enormous trust. They have such an enormous trust. And while that's beautiful in some ways, I think when it comes to your children, you need to be asking questions. You need to be getting curious. You need to be fully invested in what it is that's going on in a day. And maybe not just chalking it up to, how was your day? What went on in the few words that you might get, at the end of a school day. And I don't say this to create more fear. That is certainly not my intention. It is, again, to link back to this idea of curiosity. What is actually happening in your child's day? What do you know about their day and what's happening there in the public system?
Well, what you're saying too, I actually witnessed when my son was going to speech at under 3 years old, 3 years old, probably about into the government school down the road. There was, they had all these kids at a table by the front door and they didn't know why. And then I overheard them saying because somebody had the chicken pox or something. But the kids and the parents, and it was a little dramatic when I heard how the parents come in, and I'm thinking this whole time, God, you guys are idiots because my kid doesn't have it, but it doesn't matter because we were coming in from the outside. Like he had no chickenpox vaccine, but I was like, if they knew, they would just kick me out. But I don't know because I wasn't a student. We were just, oh, we're going to use the speech class and hang out. But it was interesting to witness that all these kids sitting at this table that didn't know, and the parents were very upset. So is that similar what you're saying? Like that whole like, oh, we're going to separate them,
Yeah,
and then
separation, just learning to fear your own body, just to fear
yeah,
yourself. There's just such
yeah.
an energy of fear present. Whereas my hope in education of any kind is to instill self love, self
Mm.
trust, just this knowing what you're capable of, what you're made of, and what you're here, what your purpose is, just the polar opposite. And yeah, it was a really sad environment for me to be a part of often. It became too much.
Yeah.
Kids
I
are
think
natural learners, right? Let's talk about that. Go ahead, Kelly.
Oh, but I think also the fear of being wrong. And that is, so we have been participating in a homeschool assistance program that through that we get, to be able to use their resource library, and they have really cool events that they create and whatnot. But this was, so we did a workshop with them, and it was the first time that my kids had been in an environment where they were called upon to give an answer to something. And I was brought right back into my childhood, and I could see it registered on their faces, this, oh my gosh, I could be wrong. Am I? And then to see when they got it right, the dopamine flood. Oh my
Mm.
gosh, I am right. Everyone knows I'm right. That's great.
Mm.
And then versus the I'm wrong. Oh my gosh, shame. I'm stupid. It instills that I don't know that I can be brave enough to be wrong, so I'll either be silent or I'm
Absolutely.
going to put all my worth in being right. And or gosh, I'm wrong all the time and people make fun of me and I'm just stupid. So we set a lot of programming in those environments that really pisses me off.
Yeah.
But also, I just wanted to touch on why. Why do we educate our children? What is it that we're wanting? And that's the
Mm.
crux of what we have chosen to do. And again, everybody gets to pick. But the idea of my children need to do this curriculum, they need to take these classes, they need to whatever, to do what? And I know for our family, we've decided that we want to raise people who feel capable, empowered, and know that they can learn anything. If they're curious about it, they have the tools to learn everything. When we were making the decision to educate our children this way, my husband said, like, what is it? How, at the time, I was a self-taught photographer, and that was how we were earning all of our money. And he said to me, like, to help me convince me of like his logic here, how did you learn to be a photographer? I said, well, I picked up a camera, I read tutorials, I watch YouTube videos, I talk to other photographers, I problem
Wow.
solve, and I do it. I actually am a photographer. And he's like, that's how you learn anything. So what it is,
Mm.
we have this antiquated idea that our children to be able to have, we want them to not be poor so that they can actually have a place to live, feed
Just
themselves,
crazy,
and
right?
have children. That's the point, right? Well,
Sorry. It's just like crazy bananas. It's
and so
just,
with that, like
oh,
how best can we help them thrive in that? And I just don't feel, and again, this is my opinion, but the government school systems or any school system in that way doesn't make sense to me. I love Mariana, your the pick and choose. Like my child is curious about this thing. Let's let them take. They want to learn why words are the way they are. Let's take a Latin class. There are so many free resources like Khan Academy, and that's KAHN, and they're just you can learn anything you want. I have my 16-year-old is curious about, and she wants to have more of a classical education. So she's taking these things on her own. I'll help, like, because she wants some accountability. We'll check in with that, but there's nothing required except what it is that is going to get you what you want. And Kelly, like you were saying, yeah, there's lots of really amazing quality schools that want alternatively educated children because they are thinking outside the box, but also why college? There are so many baristas that are highly educated that are still making minimum wage because they can't get a freaking job. So, what if you allowed your children the freedom to, at age 14, start their own business?
Yep.
Without the pressure of, excuse me, did you get your math done? Do you know, because your algebra really isn't up to par. It's like, who uses algebra? I'm not an engineer. I don't remember algebra at all.
And they
I'm
give a
trying to
lot
help
of
my
work.
daughter.
They give a
Yeah.
lot of work in school right now. I'm working with someone who went from homeschool to trying out like government school. And I'm just like, do you even have time to breathe? Like, how do you eat? Like, it's like boom, boom, boom. And I'm like, why is it? And I think it takes the light away from children a lot if they're not, if they're super stressed and they're like, how am I doing this? What does it look like? And I love the way you said that because it kind of comes back to this, what I just said is like, children just know how to learn unless they have some severe disability. But it's like we're just natural learners, is what I'm hearing, what you're
Yeah,
saying.
one last thing as an example, like so I have an 11-year-old boy who loves his video games and we've, tried to structure like set times so there's a limitation. It's not that my children get to do whatever. They're not running around the house like throwing bags of flour everywhere and like with VR goggles on. So, but so he was asking like, "Hey, can I play this game with a friend online?" And like, buddy, hang on. All right, I know you have this set of time, but I need you to do something that's showing me that you are developing, basically." And I said, "Okay, I want you to write a 1 page worth of a game that you're really loving and why and how it operates. Like, what is the main function of the game and like the why you're playing it." Anyway, I wasn't sure what to expect. But when he came back within 30 minutes with this page and I had him read it out loud to me, I was like, holy heck, my child is very good at writing. And I know some of us
Wow.
gravitate towards, but
Yeah.
like he was able to explain it. It was so succinct, it was so articulate, and like the his vocab is great. And it was to me as a mom, again, of unschooling, it is frightening. She's like, how do I know that they're being smart or that they're doing they're learning what they need to, again, to be functioning adults and not just like the lowest common denominator, but that they can thrive because that's our hearts, right? Our hearts are to
Mhm.
help our children so that they can do anything they want. And so for me, that was a really encouraging exercise to see like, okay, you're fine. Go play your game. You got your hour. Go do that. That there are different
Yeah.
ways of being able to gauge where our children are at. And
And they're in different levels. Like I think this is such a good example as your own children are the example of like because everyone is going to learn so differently. And I think about my two boys, my older one, when you were saying that, he goes to this more of this holistic hybrid. I think I shared it with everybody. It's called Forge. And it's boys, it's all different ages. And he had to, one of these projects they did, and he loved it. He's very hands-on. So he built, his idea was a automatic lock picking. So in order to do that, he had to make a dimensional cardboard prototype and he had to like kind of sell it like and they have guides there at this space and it was just so fascinating because I'm learning that my son actually really likes video stuff and even maybe a little bit of acting. He doesn't say acting, but he even was just coming in yesterday with different clothes on doing these like little skits and it was hilarious because he's very comedic and I'm like, who is this kid? Who's he becoming? Because he's 15 now. He just turned 15, which is a whole other level. But I know what you're saying, Kelly. It's like you're watching kind of things come together. And I think we don't know at times, right? It's kind of like, yeah, like what do you like right now? Like just like us. Like we like different things. Like I'm so into poetry right now. And so I've got my younger one curious about it. He was kind of resistant, but I also feel like that's okay to be resistant because I want him to feel and try different things, right? But that's what we have to I feel like we have to be careful with. And I created this whole thing of all these really cool YouTube poetry things that I'm learning about too. I'm like, oh, acronym, metaphor. And now we're doing these beautiful, like, it's taking us like weeks to do because my school mind's like, oh, we should just get it done, right? Even though maybe you learn nothing. But it's like, oh, we're taking our time really looking at it, seeing how it kind of unfolds. But yeah, meeting the learning is so individual. Mariana, how old are your children again?
My daughter is 6 and my son is 9. So they are in a, what I keep thinking as I was listening to each of you, where I'm at, because at the end it's like, where are you at in what you want to do with your children, right? It's so individual, and you need to really be able to listen beyond the fear we've been programmed into, because this is a trap, right? But also what suits your family and what suits you. So I was, my daughter, she really loves being with children. My son is more like, I can be on my own, I can read my stuff, do my parkour, he's such a natural for like sports like his dad. And it's just, so I observe, and I if I didn't have them with me, I wouldn't observe certain things, as your point, Nicole, because till a certain point I trusted, even if it's a Montessori school, which I'm not saying is the answer. Nothing is the answer. But I knew the people I was teaching, so I trusted. I was like, yes, this is where my children need to be. I know they're going to follow them. They're not going to put them in boxes. So I like this. But now I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to do that again, because at the same time I'm learning about my children and I'm able to teach them things. Teach them things that are important to me. Or they see me meditate, and my son is like, I want to meditate, Mama. Why do you meditate? Tell me about, what is this Kundalini thing you do? Like, he's just seeing me. He's learning from my things, which normally I wouldn't have that amount of time. It's so much time without us. And I wanted to ask you something, because as an educator for so many years in a Montessori classroom, we would have a lot of parents come to observe, to see an open house, to see if this is their thing. And the classroom would be such a community that is peaceful, and it flows, and it's like a little community. Love, and their children are helping each other, and they're choosing the things. It's almost like, what is this? So parents would go say, this is not real life. This is not real life. A lot of parents. This is not real life. So then I'm asking myself right now, as I am spending time with my children, kind of protecting them from putting them in a building and not knowing at all what's going on. 1, 2, am I being over controlling here? I'm just really being frank here. 2, I feel like they're my highest and more precious investment. And when I said I'm going to have children, I knew that. I made a conscious decision. Otherwise, I would have not had them. That's just me. So then when they're not spending time with me, they're also not learning the things that matter and valuable to me, and me learning about them. So am I overprotecting them? Am I like, oh, this is, and then what are they going to do in real life out there in the Wild West, Do you have anything to say? I just want to share, because I'm sure parents think this way. I'm sure. So, ladies.
I think you're creating grounded, security-oriented children.
I also think, my friend wrote a post about, forget the rules of being realistic yesterday. And it's just this construct realistic is whatever we make it. What kind of future do we want to build? What kind of new earth are we moving towards? What does that look like? And the dreamers are here, the Waysharers are here to show what's possible. I think if you're hearing feedback like that, that's from a very set amount of conditioning that we've all come from, but we get to choose differently, right? And I also think there's so many different opportunities for learning right now. If homeschooling, unschooling in this specific way at your own home isn't a possibility for you in this moment, there are so many different opportunities popping up in the world. This is searching for quite some time. And I feel really blessed to be connected with so many friends in my life who are introducing education in a different way in their families. And, you know, there's pods. I've been a sub at some pod schools already and seen that dynamic of this small group and this free thinking and free learning that they've been a part of. There's nature schools. There's world schooling, this idea of incorporating travel, which so many people love to do. This is my vision and dream one day, to world school, to pair my absolute passion of travel with learning. You know, when do you learn the most? Sometimes you're traveling and you're immersed in different cultures and you're in the grit of these experiences. Sometimes it's not always roses when you're traveling. There's bumps, there's hardships, there's challenges, there's, you know, learning about the way that other people live. So there's just so many new and exciting opportunities. Eco schools. It's just, it's so expansive. And I think it's really about getting out of our own way and our limitations of that conditioning that we all grew up in. We all grew up in these systems. So how do we create new ones?
And that's what I heard from you, Mariana. The thing that stuck out when you said that was, well, maybe other people are saying, hey, are you going to put them in? What are you going to do? And it's like, what is the consciousness of those people? And just as not as a judgment, as an observation of like, wow, they really feel cozy and connected to that system because that's where they are. Like, it doesn't mean anyone's better or greater. It's just like, oh, but I always question when what if I get pressure around a certain thing that I feel in my heart. I'm like, what I personally am like, I just push that energy away and go, well, what do you connect with? Even if I'm like not sure, because even when I went from like, oh, we're homeschooling, I'm like, we're totally unschooling Forrest. Like that's just what's happening. I'm just gonna be real. And even someone said to him at a museum, hey, little boy, what school are you go to? And I'm like, he's unschooled. It just come out of my mouth. And the old lady's just looking at me like she had no words for it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm so tired of bending to the system. And I know it's all inside us. It's very subconscious. We all have a very deep. This is why I'm very passionate about maternity and the birth field and hospitals and trauma, because those systems also need they're pushing and pulling back all the time. And guess what? I'm seeing things which I don't like. Someone I know, baby got injured in a way that was the fault of the hospital. Do you know what I mean? It's like I'm so tired of seeing that. And so it's like, when are we advocating to say, you know what? So what? Unschooling, homeschooling, you want to do the system, but I want to question that, right? It's like I think that's what you're all here for, is to question other people's consciousness just by your own just by your own actions, right? And not saying that you have an answer, because when that old lady was like, she's just like, she had no words, and I wasn't there to educate her on it, to be honest. But I know I wanted to stand in my own light's authority, that she can create any image around it, any assumption, whatever that is. And she sees my little being here who's so present and so connected. It's like, huh. And again, I'm okay with leaving things to mystery at times, an observation, because I personally do notice different energy with children that are not in systems. They talk to you differently because you're not this big authority. They're they talk to you very differently. And I noticed that before I had kids, by the way. I was like, who's this kid in this playground? I remember in Santa Monica, California, and I'm like, he was so different. And he's like, oh, I'm homeschooled. And he was so in his body and so comfortable with talking to a stranger. And but in a way where he was like anchored in his essence, you know. And I was like, that is very curious to me. Like, what is this? And just see, you know, Yeah, I mean, again, like we were all saying, like there's an authority in certain structures, and I've already heard a few different moms in the past years saying, my 18 or my 20-year-olds, like now that they're like out of school, like they don't know how to free think. They don't know
Yeah.
how to make a decision that seems so basic. They don't know. And then I'm thinking, my heart's like, oh my gosh, like they've been told they're not allowed to year after year after year after year after year. Why? And it's why would they know how to do that? And that's really what makes my heart feel like, what are we doing with children for the future? And I want to hear maybe a little bit from everybody what you feel as we're coming close to the end, like what do you see for the the big question, the future of education? Like what do you want to bring? How about that in your hearts? Like what do you want to bring in your hearts for this? And as a family too, I know Kelly, you really kind of touched on, we're a homeschool family, and for a while, mostly it was homeschool dad. And people were, he would hang out with all the moms, a lot of moms, but it's definitely a family, and we'll probably, maybe we'll come back for that conversation because I feel like what is the family dynamic, the masculine, especially, if there's a male female connection, like what is their role in that space, I think is very, very valuable. But coming back, yeah, sorry, I'm like, I always, but yeah, like what are you bringing, even in your body of energy, your meditation? I don't know what is everybody? Yeah, whoever wants to go. Thank you.
For me, is trust. I feel like with this homeschooling, unschooling, being a Montessori teacher for so long and intuitive, what is the bottom line of everything I do when I want to teach, or every single tool I use to teach my children, is that they trust in themselves, right? So we want to see more of that. I feel like I want to see more of that, not the outside authority, not because authorities are not bad, right? Like, let's not make this bad thing. It's just like, are you listening to yourself first? So more of that intuitive part of, I ask my children often, what is your body telling you? Because I'm not inside your body. So what is your body telling you? And if you have a hard time tuning into your body, is because the mind is wrapped up, it is, whatever it is, but it's up to you. This is why I observe. So I feel that's one part of this trust that is linked to intuition. And for me particularly, which is what I moved away from the classroom, is because I feel like we're divine beings. So because I feel that and I know that, and I've always known that, I felt like I couldn't speak about those things. And I got kind of, I can't deny what I'm called to bring. So I speak openly to my children about that part of them. And it's not a religious thing. It is more like, you are a divine being in a body having an experience, not the other way around. That's just me, right? Like, you are not your mind, you are not your body. These are your vehicles, these are your ways. So that is what I want to see more in education. I want to see more we're sitting in who we are, in our power, and then we're using our tools and we're creating with that. So when I brought the other question about fear, it's because I feel like it's in the air, right? And right now there's so much fear. And I love that Nicole brought this like frequency up, right? Like, we are in this duality right now of creating. We're creating. So there's fear because everything is falling down as it should. And now what do we want to do? We see the fear and we go, okay, I'm afraid of this. But still, what do I want to do with this, with education, with children and families, to support that trust, that divinity? That's just where I'm at. Ladies, you go.
All right, I'll go. Thank you. I had a lot of similar thoughts to you, Mariana. Thank you for that. I was thinking about the crumbling, and the crumbling really is essentially happening in all systems: political, medical, financial, education, all of them. And I say, let it. I'm excited for that. I've been waiting for this time. let it, don't fight the crumble. Allow it to happen, and in its place, let's not recreate the same old, let's create exactly what it is that we desire, something so different, so beautiful. And in terms of education, I guess I just really want to see that we're all teachers. Education doesn't come from a system, a higher up being. It doesn't come from a specific role or age. We're all here as teachers to one another. And from my understanding, not as a mom yet, but our children are some of our greatest teachers. So let's allow them to show us the way in education. Let everyone come together to share their wisdom and be one another's teacher. And I think I just see it as designing the spaces that allow us to really remember who we are, recognize our gifts, and be able to utilize those to the best of our ability for the rest of our lives. That's how I want to see education. Not under some roof, but just as an energy, as a frequency, as a way of being.
That is so beautiful. Yeah, I don't know. You girls brought up like kind of everything. I think I agree. I want to see things are crumbling and, as they should, and that we, again, the question that for me is how can I best support my children with the information that they need to be sovereign, self-responsible, thriving adults? And that is a question that each parent gets to ask because everyone has their own value system and their own construct. But also, there is so much work that we get to do as teachers, as mothers, as women, as nurturers of the world. And the more work that we can do in shedding our constructs that don't help us. Again, we were all brought up in the systems, on all the systems, and where we're able to shed those broken ways of looking at the world and raising our children, the more freedom and I think the healthier that our future can be.
We're like, let's take that all in. That was so beautiful, everybody. It was so good.
I was
I
really
feel
excited.
hopeful about our future.
We just created the future right here.
We're done.
Lovely.
Well, I want to thank you all for joining, and Nicole, Kelly, Mariana, and those that want to reach out to you, they'll be able to through this podcast. And to learn more about them, join their Instagram platforms and get more of that energy. And be open and curious is my biggest thing, is keep questioning things. Like, we have to be so self-loving and compassionate with ourselves. Like, I do believe most moms and parents, and there's of course maybe a small percentage that do want to do the best for their babies, their children, and even just for children in education overall. Like, and our energies are so, I feel like we can create positive infectiousness. That could be the good infectiousness of like just continuing to open our hearts, be in that space of love, and keep seeing where it goes. Because I feel like when we're opening, even in fear, it's okay to have fear, that we get to learn and grow and expand. And I know on my own personal journey with my children, I've gone from system to home to hybrid. And I'm like, oh, look at this. And it's just, to me, now I'm looking back and seeing like, wow, I'm so glad that I took chances and didn't just follow the ways or the rules because I was so uncomfortable. And we have to push out of our own uncomfortableness to question things and to see. And again, it's still a huge experiment. Let's see what happens.
But it's our experiment.
There you go.
Right. Yeah. Thank you.
Well,
Thank you,
thank you all
Kelly.
again. Yes, thank you. And I want to thank you all for joining episode 238, March 2026, Education Roundtable Conversations. The future of our children is here now. Thank you for joining Spirit Baby Radio with your host, me, Kelly Meehan. Please join my community and stay in touch with monthly energy rants. Spirit Baby poetry, and get access to Spirit Baby 101 with tips and practices at my newsletter at newearthchildren.com. And join me on Instagram with lives at Spirit Baby Medium, and join the Mighty Networks, the Spirit Baby Collective membership, and Motherhood to Mediumship. Remember, you are the heart that holds communication, and it is your time to connect. Come share in the great shift of your mind and the true spirit of your heart with Spirit Baby Communication.